Alright, greetings and salutations everyone. My name is Kaden Nighthawk and welcome back to the Let's Code, Let's Dev, whatever you want to call it series of the Megaman X platformer in GameMaker Studio 1.4. So in the last episode we have rewrote our damage mechanics, or projectile damage mechanics, and now we're going to be using that in an introductory to developing enemies. So as I mentioned in the previous episode, I want to be able to shoot at this dummy enemy here and not inflict any damage, and also I want this thing to not hurt me. Whereas with this one, it's the polar opposite. I want to do damage to this one, destroy it, while in the process have it also damage me if I touch it. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to go ahead and immediately do is create a new script called no special. This is going to be a just like check index. It's going to be a simplifier variable to avoid the hassle of saying if sprite index is equal to this or sprite index is equal to this, yada yada yada. But instead of checking for sprite indexes, we're checking for special conditions, and hence the name no special. So we're going to name this no special, and this requires no arguments at all, but we're just going to say a comment here, no special blah. So if for the time being, we're just going to put a check index for being hurt for now. So if check index hurt, and actually I'm going to put this parentheses down here for now and say return 1, else return 0. So what is check index hurt? It's basically to check to see if if our sprite indexes equals any of these hurt sprites, and if so, it will return a 1. And since this is going to be 1, then we're returning a 1 here, and then we can't continue forth with the condition, because basically we want to say if we don't have any special conditions, then we can do this. We don't have check index hurt defined at all, which is okay, but here's the spiel behind that. I went ahead and created new sprites for the for some hit sprites I have here. I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description to these sprite files, but basically this is the gist of it. Unless if I've already released these, but I'll just go ahead and release these specific hurt sprites here. Where is it? Whoa, hold up just a second, everyone. Okay, so this is a very quick video editor's note. I've received a couple comments down in some of my previous videos of the series, and I'm happy to report that instead of leaving some sprite files, I'm actually going to leave the current GameMaker project down in the link in the description instead. So if you want to look at this code and kind of copy paste if necessary, or you just want to just compare your work while you watch to the end of this video, please feel free to do so. Anyway, let's go ahead and resume. Currently I only have one sprite for knockback, or actually no, not that one. This one. So I've got this hurt sprite here, and I'll go ahead and show the preview, and you can see it animating. This is one of the default hurt sprites that X has when he gets inflicted with damage. There's also another sprite edit with no armor with the animation set that the force armor has. So it animates different. How do I explain it? So with the force armor in Megaman X5 here, basically he kind of hunches up and then goes back to idling. There's a sprite edit with that style in this armor here that I also have, but I don't have in the game just yet, but we'll add it later. So that's just to show that if you need to know the specifics, what I did is I inserted in all the sprites. I resized the canvas to 65 by 82 with respect to the image's center, and then I have the origin set to 32 by 20. Same deal with the knockback sprite you just saw here, but the origin is set to 31 by 20 this time. Okay, so we can immediately go back into our script and go to check index and say this. For our case hurt, and just say if sprite index is equal to hurt sprite A, or sprite index is equal to hurt sprite B, or sprite index is equal to knockback sprite. Hurt sprite A and hurt sprite B, as I talk about, is the two varying hurting sprites. The one that where he hunches or he kind of leans back, as you just saw in the image there. And if that's the case, we're just going to return 1 and break and end the statement. Now, I don't recall whether or not if I've defined hurt sprite A and B or not. So just to double check, I'm going to go into player types and then open up our obj_nx and then look into, not that, sprite files and see, yes, I have already. Perfect. So right now I have them hurt sprite A and hurt sprite B both set to this hurt sprite here, but we will import the other variation sprite and change one of these back to that. All right, cool. So with that out of the way, we need to also now go into the controller for the player and actually update some of our animation handling controllers. So I have no special defined here. So if no special, so basically only at this moment, if we're not animating with a hurt sprite, then we'll still be able to run all the stuff in here. Similarly, we need to go into this duck statement here and say if check index duck and not no special. And we also need to define another instance here saying or you can also say or. No special meaning we are hurt, and check index run. If we meet either of these two conditions here, we will animate the player being idle, and I think that is it just for animating wise, because basically like if we don't have this, we're going to see a frame of the hurt sprite, but then it's going to go back to idling or running or whatnot. But then we can also adjust the code later on in the future as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and also restrict the player when he gets hit to momentarily freeze. So like when he gets hit, he's going to pause and hold still, but then once he's not hurt anymore, then he's going to move again. So right where it says selective HSP values, I'm going to say if can move and no special again. And yeah, we'll start with that and hit OK. And then we're just going to move on from that. All right, cool. So go ahead and close out these windows, and I'm going to go ahead and start opening up some reference code here, because the first thing that we'll need to create is a new script for both damaging the player and damaging the enemy here. All right, perfect. Here we go. So we'll go ahead and start with damaging the enemy. So we're going to open up the stage group in the scripts tab and go ahead and create a script, and we're just going to call this apply damage. And then we're going to have two arguments for the script, apply damage. The first being the amount, which for this we are going to use our damage class variable we have supplied in the master controller of the enemy, or no, excuse me, the projectile. So it will do this amount of damage depending on which projectile it is. And the recovery time is thanks to the recovery array variable we've created. And just to add a very simple block comment of what this does, this script is a basic damage system for enemies. Perfect. So we're going to set the variable within the enemy hurt is equal to true. We're going to set the alarm 0 to argument 1, so the amount of time it's going to take before we can damage the enemy again. Because in alarm 0, we're going to make it so the hurt variable goes to false, and then we can damage it again. And then, of course, we're going to set HP minus equal to argument 0. And then we'll go ahead and close out of that for now, because we're also later going to add a damage counter to the enemies. So when we hit it, it's going to display how much damage we did, but also it's going to display the health bar that we did. So we'll come back to this in just a little bit. We can do the same thing too for our player. I actually haven't done that yet in my other builds, but it's basically the same principle as what I will show you here later. So we'll go ahead and just do, for now, in the player group called damage player, and then I'm going to say in the comment here, there's 3 arguments for this one: the amount of damage we want to do, how long we want to wait before it can be damaged again, and whether or not where we got hit by is going to knock us back a few things. So damage player, amount, recovery time, and knockback, question mark. So similarly, we're going to set hurt equal to true. our alarm 1 this time, because I think alarm 0 is occupied by a dummy alarm. Yes, it is. We're going to set the variable hurt to false, so that's already good to go. So we're going to set that to argument 1. And then we're going to say HHP minus equal to argument 0. So now we're going to say if no special, so basically at this point, if we are not, let's see, how do I say this? If we are not animating the hurt sprite right now, so if no special, and we are not checking the index of duck, we're going to open and close some curly braces, and then we're going to say if argument 2, so basically if we're saying, because argument 2 here is going to be a true or false statement, and these are both integer values here. So if argument 2 is true, we're going to assign a knockback sprite for now equal to knockback sprite, and then otherwise we're going to say var s is equal to choose hurt sprite A, hurt sprite B. We're going to set sprite index equal to 0, or no, equal to s. And then on the outside of this, I'm going to say image index is equal to 0, and that's the end of that little batch of code there. Then we're going to set some of our other variables equal to 0. So we're going to set dash timer equal to 0 and dash equal to 0. So basically we're canceling our dash, we're pausing when we got hit. We're setting HSP equal to 0. And then we're also going to cancel out our charge for now. So we're going to say charge is equal to 0 with effect charge circle, if I can spell, instance destroy, and then with effect charge balls, instance destroy, and that one. Now that script should be done. Perfect. Good to go. All right, so now we're going to go into our enemy controller here and start filling it in with some wonderful stuff. So in the create event here, we're going to go ahead and create that. See what I did there? And then drag in a piece of code and call this piece of code the master controller variables. We're going to implement our platformer code and say HSP is equal to 0, HSP carry is equal to 0, and vertical speed is equal to 0. Because basically we're going to have, we're going to let our enemies have some physics with our platformer variables. So like it can be able to fall due to gravity, it can move around back and forth depending on which way it's facing, etc., etc. We're also going to set move equal to 0, and then the variable that I've mentioned in the last part, has gravity, is equal to true. What is has gravity? It's pretty explanatory just by looking at it. We're trying to figure out whether or not if this enemy is floating or flying, and if so, has gravity is going to be false. But if it's something that can be affected by gravity, then we set this variable to true. And now we're going to go ahead and create some game dependent variables. We're going to set the variable hurt to be false. Three AI variables, active be equal to false, block equal to false, override equal to false. Now, what are these? Obviously, we know hurt is related to our health. We know active, well, actually, we don't know this. Active here is going to turn on our AI controller here. So let's say that this window here is the view in the room, and my mouse cursor is the enemy. If I'm in here, if I'm within the view of the camera, then this active variable is going to be set to true. But if the player starts walking away and I'm starting to move off camera, we're setting the AI variable active to false. I'll go ahead and jump down to override here, saying this is depending if it provides active. if this variable is set to true, no matter where we are in the room, no matter where the camera is, no matter what our view is in our room here, in the game maker here, the AI is going to be active constantly. Now block is dependent if the enemy has a shield, so like it might turn up or jump up the resistance of the thing. So depending if enemy has a shield. So then we're going to set some child variables if they're not set within the child objects being parented to this controller here. If not note set, we're going to set the HP equal to 10, HP start equal to HP, bleed equal to HP, and resistance equal to 0.9. Now, what do these variables mean? So HP is obviously our health points. Our HP start is equal to the size of the health bar that we're going to be drawing later with another object for doing the damage counter. And then, let's see, bleed is like a little effect. Like when you damage, when the player gets damaged in the X series, and then say it's a big amount of damage, you'll see like the health bar drops down, but then you also see this red bar in the background that starts to degrade. That's basically what bleed is going to do. And then there's another thing I would like to accomplish. You know how when you walk away and you're out of view here, and you come back and there's an enemy there again? We're basically going to be creating a object that respawns the enemy when killed and also out of the view of the camera. So here I'll make a comment that says create a respawn portal when the player leaves the view of the spawner. Var spawner is equal to instance create x start y start obj enemy spawner. We haven't defined this object yet, that's okay. And then we're going to say spawner.egg is equal to object index. Now the variable egg here I'm using is going to be the object index of our enemy that assigns to the spawner. So if it's dummy 1 and we walk away, and it will respawn dummy 1. If it's like something different, like say like a gunner, it will respawn the gunner and not the dummy 1. All right, so we can go ahead and close out of that. That's all the code we need there. Let's go ahead and add a new event called the begin step. This is going to control whether or not the AI is active. So we're going to call this the active. Well, I just created a new sprite. I'm not sure what buttons I pressed there, but ignore that. Active switch controller. So if we're not overriding, so basically if override is set to false, the active variable is going to be true or false depending if we're in the room. Otherwise, active is going to be constantly true. I can go ahead and say that down here and say else active is equal to true. No problem. So the way we calculate whether or not active is true is based on the bounding box of the sprite index and whether or not it is intersecting in the view, in some of the view properties, that being like the x coordinate of the view, the y coordinate of the view, the width of the view, and then the height of the view. So it's a big if statement here. So here we go. We're going to say if, open two parentheses, b box right, the bounding box of our object, so the right face of the bounding box here, is greater than view x view minus 20, and b box left, the left face of our bounding box, is less than view x view plus view, wait, hold on, plus view w view plus 20, and b box bottom is greater than view y view minus 20, and finally if b box top is less than view y view plus h view, view h view, sorry, plus 20. If all these conditions are met, we are going to say active is equal to true. Otherwise, it's going to be set to false. And that's it. So additionally, we also need to check at the beginning of each frame how much health the enemy has. And if it's less than or equal to 0, we explode it, basically. So we're going to call this the death sequence. And then say if HP is less than or equal to 0, later on we can come back here and apply a explosion effect. But for now we'll just say instance destroy. That's all good and dandy. Now let's see. Speaking of destroy, let's add into the destroy event, and we're going to update this spawner we're going to be creating here in just a little bit. Update the respawner. Var spawn is equal to instance nearest x start, so the starting position where it was first created. Similarly with y start, obj enemy spawner. And we're going to say with spawn, spawned is equal to false, and image blend is equal to c underscore red. Now spawned is the true or false variable depending on if the enemy has been spawned or not. And we're setting the image blend, basically we're making it the color of the sprite red just for debugging purposes, just to see whether or not if the functionality of the spawner is working. So I'm going to go ahead and take out of that, and that one's good to go. See, go ahead and close some of these tabs. And then of course, as I've mentioned in the apply damage script, we're going to set alarm 0 to be some time, and when the alarm is done, we're setting the variable hurt to false. That's done. Pretty easy. Now what if we want to make damage to the player? We're going to go ahead and create a collision effect, and we're going to find our player type here, and then we're going to call the damage player script, and we're going to go ahead and apply this to others, so it applies to the player and not the enemy. And then we're going to comment saying damage the player. If not hurt, damage player. The amount, I'm going to for temporarily say 0. Later on, I'm going to change this to 1, because when you by default, when you collide with an enemy, you will get hit at least by 1 hit point. Maybe it can vary depending on which armor you're wearing, but yeah, you know. Recovery time, I'm going to set to room speed, so every second we can damage the player again. And I'm going to set knockback to false, because really this thing doesn't need to slam us back or anything. So we'll go ahead and close out of that, and that's that one done. So now let's go ahead and go into create our step event here, and we will literally just copy and paste a platformer controller from credit to Sean Spalding. So literally you can take the code from the player and copy and paste these elements here. We want to react to the inputs of moving is equal to our image X scale, so depending on which way we are facing, that's the way we will move. We are going to edit this and say, oh, actually no, it's already in here. So basically, if our vertical speed is less than 10 and we have gravity, so basically if we want gravity to affect the vertical distance of this, we're going to just apply the gravity as usual. And of course, we have our moving platform code, and then our horizontal and our vertical collision. That's done. We're going to add one more bit of code here. I'm going to close out of that there. And this is just a little aesthetical effect. And we're going to call this our health bar effect controller. And basically, we're going to say if bleed is greater than HP, bleed is going to be minus equals 0.25, else bleed is equal to HP. Again, aesthetical effects, we can dive into this later, but that is everything for the enemy controller here. Now, in terms of, so as far as the respawner goes, we're basically going to go into our controllers group and create a new object called obj underscore enemy spawner. We're going to go ahead and assign a sprite as well to our 16 by 16 bit of floor and make it temporarily visible until everything is working perfectly. we just need to add 2 events, our create event and then our outside and an outside view effect, which you can find under the other button, views, outside view. All right, so we'll go ahead and execute a piece of code and just say initialize variables. And I'm going to make a block comment here for debugging purposes, saying calling a reference. And this reference is based off of the image blend that I've defined earlier. So if it's green, that means the enemy is spawned, or enemy is spawned. And if it's red, the enemy is to be spawned. And then we're going to set the image blend initially to C_line, which is green, and spawned to true. Because when we create the instance, for every enemy that is created in the room, it's going to automatically create this enemy spawner and set it to true because the enemy is already spawned and we don't have to worry about that. Now on our outside view step here, or our event, we're going to drag in a piece of code, and it's it's basically this. We're gonna create a local variable called inst equal to instance place xy egg. If you remember, egg is the object index of the enemy. And basically what we're trying to do when the spawner is outside of this camera view over here, we're going to make sure that there is no instance there at the moment and make sure that the enemy is not spawned. And if that's the case, it's going to create the instance of whatever the enemy object index is and reset the variable spawn to true, and then make sure it's green, or the spawner is green. So if instance is equal to no one, so if there's no instance at the place that we have specified here, and we are not spawned, we're going to open and close some curly braces and say instance create xy egg, set spawn equal to true, and then image blend equal to C_line. And that should be everything up to this moment prior to adding the damage counter I'm going to be adding here in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead. For now, if I run the game, we go to damage our enemies. Let's see what happens too. Ooh, override not set before reading. Oh, if I look into here, yep, forgotten there. So we'll go ahead and run the game. Should see. Move speed is not set. I'm going to go ahead and set move speed in the master controller of the enemy to 0. But like in other enemies, you can set that in move speed to a different value if you like. Now, will it run? Yes. So as you can see, since this dummy enemy here has no gravity, it's floating here, whereas this one's got gravity. I can walk up to it and get damaged and get stuck. Oh, and I know why that's the case, because I haven't added a animation end condition for the player here. I'll fix that in a second. But in theory, if I shoot this guy, oh wait, did we not? Oh, okay, I know why. That's slightly embarrassing. So let's go ahead and fix this bug, and I'm going to explain why that didn't work. But let's see. We're going to create a new case under the animate player, and we're going to say hurt if check index hurt. Whoop. Open and close some curly braces. Image index is equal to 0. Animate player idle. Okay. So the reason the projectile went through the enemy is because we didn't make a collision event with that enemy, from the projectile to the enemy. So we need to do that really quick. We need to go into our master controller weapon and then add a new event for collision, stage, enemies, controller, CTRL_enemy. And then we're going to create 2 pieces of code here. One being applied to the enemy here with so setting this to other, and the other being to self, just creating a collision effect. So if I open up my reference code here, we're going to apply damage and then say var o equal to our object index. So if this enemy is not hurt, we're going to apply damage. And here's where our projectile mechanics come in. So other.damage class, O being the object index of the enemy. And if you remember in get damage constants, we've defined damage class O here already. So I'll say for the chart shot here. So what is happening here is the other object index being the projectile that's hitting it. And we're going to be looking for the array variable damage class based on whatever the object index is for the enemy. And we have that defined here already. So it's going to read this value and say, oh, we have a damage class value for obj dummy1, and we're going to apply 0 damage to it. So it's not going to subtract any health. And similarly, oh, we're going to wait this amount of time before we can damage it again. So we can type other.recover O. And then remember, O being the local variable for our object index of the enemy. And that's that. So we can go ahead and close out of those. And I'm going to drag up above the apply damage code here and create a collision effect. Now, if you remember me talking about in the last part where we have the penetration versus resistance factor, we're saying that if the resistance of the other object is greater than the penetration value, it's going to destroy the projectile but not go straight through the enemy. That would be the case if the penetration value was greater than the resistance. And then, yeah, let's see. So with that, we're going to say var obj is equal to other.object index. And then we're going to say if penetration is greater than obj.resistance, we're going to open and close some curly braces and undo an else, open, close curly braces. So this is the case for if we want the projectile to go through the enemy. We're just going to say if obj hurt is not equal to false, we're going to create a new effect, XY proj effect. Now, and also here, open and close some more curly braces and actually put this code in here. And also say if proj effect is not equal to 0, we'll say that, and then say else new effect XY col underscore plasma. All right, and then we'll literally just copy this code into here, and then we're going to additionally say instance destroy, and that should be it. Now, why it? Oh, that's why. Malformed if statement. If I move continue with that. So what's happening here? So if our penetration value is greater than the resistance of the enemy, so basically we're going to want the projectile to go through. It's going if the object is not hurt, like if it hasn't received damage in a while, we're going to create the projectile effect when it's colliding with the enemy, but we're not going to destroy the instance. That would be the case in this instance here if the resistance of the enemy is greater than the penetration. So it's got like some toughness to it, and the projectile hits it. It's like, oh, you're not going to go through me. I'm going to destroy you, puny projectile, and it's going to destroy the instance. So yeah, you know, enough said on that. So yeah, now if I run the game, in theory, everything here should work. All right, so no crashes yet. Bang, perfect. So, but okay, hello there. Oh, hold on, let me check really quick. Okay, so I figured out the issue, and my hypothesis was false. from the past part. So you will notice here, what are these numbers? So the top one here is a 0 or 1 value for whether or not if hurt is equal to true or false. And then this is the alarm state. So if I go and charge up and blast it, you can see hurt goes from 0 to 1 and back to 0 after your alarm is done. And then you can see I keep blasting at it, yeah. But when I go to shoot it with a projectile that doesn't have all the damage, class, and recovery times defined, and it is trying to rely on the control enemy here, unfortunately, it gets stuck. I'm not sure why that happens. I thought that would work, but this unfortunately means that for every single enemy object, you have to define a damage class and a recovery. So my most sincerest of apologies, everyone, on this, but literally all we can do is copy this number, paste it down, copy this number, paste it down, and then copy this number, paste it down. We're going to change control enemy to obj underscore dummy1, and then recover obj underscore dummy2, there we go. And then same thing up here, obj dummy1, obj dummy2, and then set this value to 0 for obj dummy1, and then this value at 1 for obj dummy2. This, in theory, now should work. All right, perfect. Now it is working. So you can notice too that as I'm shooting it, you can see the collision projectile being showcased 1, while the hurt variable is set to false initially. That is because in the future we'll add a little miss projectile that goes ting, and might deflect the projectile elsewhere. But if we go down and duck and shoot at this other one, all right, cool, that's working. Now, if I remember correctly, there was 10 hit points, so that's 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, all right, and it's dead. You can see that the green instance here versus our enemy spawner turned from green to red. So in theory, if I walk away and also get hit, and perfect, that's okay. Also, this is working awesome. My animation and fix worked, so we can get damage for a split second. We can walk about our way. It's not doing any damage to us really, but we also need to set this or change something in dummy1 so this one doesn't attack us, but the other one is going to attack us here. So if I start walking away, watch what happens here. You saw it just for a split second, right? If you walk back, you can see that this turned green, and now we have our second dummy instance, and we can shoot it again, get hurt for a second, and, well, just keep on shooting at it, and then it goes away, and you rinse and repeat, and you leave the area and come back. Oh, there it is again. You have to keep blasting at it until you really want it to go away. So then we can go blam, and then blammo, and there's that. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and fix the bug with the dummy1 attacking us. So if we want to override any events being called from the parent object, we can literally just define the event here and then do other things otherwise. So with this one, we're literally just going to say exit this event and make a comment that's saying don't damage the player. And then if we hit run, this time we should see, if we walk up to this guy, nothing happens. We are free to kind of roam around. But if we walk up to this one, ow, 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 and everything works just swellingly. We can shoot this one, and we're not doing any damage to this. But how do we know how much damage we are doing or how much health point or hit points are left? That's where our damage counter aesthetical effect is going to come in. It's pretty easy to make. So the first thing we're going to do is go back up to our apply damage, and we are going to create some local variables now. So we basically need to create an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, and an object index for another local variable that's going to create the instance given with these local variables here. So we're going to say var xc YCOC. XC is our X coordinate of where we want to create it. Y, similar with YC in the Y direction. O is going to be our object index, and C is going to be the variable that says instance create XC, YC, O. All right, so XC we're going to say is equal to X plus I random, so a random integer from 0 to 10, so it's going to variate. So 0 times choose -1, 1. So it's going to either be between 0 and 10 in the positive x or the negative x direction, depending on what number is chosen between -1 and 1. YC is going to be y minus 20. O is going to be CTRL underscore damage counter, which is an object we will define. And then we're going to say C is equal to instance create XC, YC, O. And then we're going to predefine variables outside of the create event of the damage counter controller. So we're going to say CAMT is equal to argument 0, the amount of damage we're doing. C.HCHP is equal to HP. C.HC bleed is equal to bleed, excuse me. And then C.HCHP start is equal to HP start. So basically with those variables, we are transferring over to the damage counter for the health bar of the player. So we're just transferring all that the health data over that so we can see a visual representation. So we'll go ahead and close out of that, and then we're going to go ahead and create that controller in the controllers group of the enemy group of the stage group. That's a mouthful, I know. So CTRL underscore damage counter. It doesn't need to have a sprite index, but maybe you should set a negative depth so it's visible amongst the player. And then in the create event, we are additionally going to plop in a piece of code and say alarm 0 is equal to room speed times 0.15. And then alpha, a custom alpha variable, we're setting that to 1. So what's going to happen, what I'm going to make is a damage indicator with the health bar going up with it. It's going to go up a certain amount of Y pixels for a set amount of time with the alarm 0, and then it's going to start fading out and it'll destroy the instance afterwards. So with that, we're just going to say add event. Well, first we need to also define that alarm. This is basically a dummy alarm too. All right, so with that, we'll say, we'll now create a step event here, and then we'll come in and create a main movement controller. So if our alpha is greater than 0, if we can still see this visibly, if we are not alarming 0, y minus equal 3. So basically, when we call that alarm in the create event, we're setting a timer before it will stop moving and start fading away. And otherwise, we're going to set alpha to start subtracting by 0.05. Otherwise, we will destroy the instance and then move on with our day. And of course, likewise, what we did in the enemy controller with our health bar effects, we're going to say if HC bleed is greater than HC HP, HC bleed minus equal 0.25, and then else HC bleed is equal to HC HP. And that's that done. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and create a draw event. Just go ahead and hit draw. You don't need to hit draw GUI. And then this is going to be our master drawing controller. So at first we're going to say we need to draw our damage amount and say draw set H align to FA middle, and then var C which is a local variable for C underscore Y, just to save typing or make it typing tidy and whatnot. And we're gonna say draw text color X, Y, and T, which is the amount of damage the projectile is doing that was defined in applied damage. And then we're just going to say for our colors, oh, I did this again, but this needs to be spelled the British way, COLOUR, and then you'll see all the arguments pop up here in the bottom here. Go! the stream, but then you also know C1, C2, C3, and C4. What are those? Those are basically the colors at each corner of the text, and we're going to keep it a constant color, C underscore white. We could type C underscore white, C underscore white, C underscore white, but you can see how long it gets, and it's also same. But to work smarter and not harder, since we defined our local variable here, we can go C, comma, C, comma, C, comma, C, comma. I dare you guys to make a remix on that. And then we're going to set the alpha to our alpha variable. And now we're going to draw the health bar next of the enemy. But then before we do that, we need to have an initial coordinate set up. Just again for code tidying for the future. Initial coordinates and setup. So now we're going to set the alpha of what we're going to, the health bar we're going to draw to our variable alpha. And then we're going to get ready to define some local variables again. We're basically going to be defining some coordinates for where the health bar is going to be drawn, the amount of the first health bar, and then the amount of the second health bar we're going to be drawing underneath that, the size of the health bar, and then some colors. So here we go. Var x1, x2, y1, y2, h amt, b amt, h size, b size, c1, c2, and c3. Now x1 through y2 is our coordinates for our health bar. I should say. x1 is going to be equal to x. x2 is going to be equal to x1 plus 20. y1 is going to be equal to our start coordinate of where the damage counter was created. Because we say y, basically the health bar is going to float up with the text that's being drawn up above here. So that's why we're using y start. Minus 3. And then we're going to say y2 is equal to y1 plus 3. And basically this is defining our thickness of the health bar. H amount, or H amt is going to be equal to HC HP. And similarly with B amt is going to be equal to HC bleed. And then we're going to say HC size is equal to HC HP, divided by HC HP start times 100. And we're going to say B size is equal to HC bleed divided by HC HP start times 100. And then we have C1 through C3 are colors. We're going to set C1 equal to C underscore black, C2 equal to C underscore red, and then C3 equal to C underscore yellow. So as I mentioned, we're going to be drawing two health bars over each other, just to also see and register the bleed effect first. So we're going to draw them in the order that we want to see them last, or behind each other, I guess. So first, if that doesn't make sense, we're just going to start by drawing the bleeding health bar. And then we're going to say draw health bar. All right, coordinates x1, y1, x2, y2, the amount being B size, C1, our background color being C1, our minimum value color being C2, our maximum value color still being C2. The direction you apply here is the anchor point. By default, if you wanted the health bar to go from right to left, decreasing, set that to 0. If you want to show the background, we're going to set that to true, and the show border, we're going to set that to true. Similarly, with drawing the regular health bar, we're going to set draw health bar to x1, y1, x2, y2, but instead we're going to use HC size, C1, C3, C3. We're not going to show the background. We're not going to show the border, and we're going to have an anchorage of left, and then we're going to reset our alpha to 1. Now, if we run the game and shoot at our dummies, we should see a hit counter and a health point. Oh, I found it. This line right here, I might have typed a little too fast. But apparently our x-coordinate is our y-coordinate, and our y-coordinate is our x-coordinate? That doesn't make any sense.
So now if we fix that and run the game, we should hopefully see when we spawn in, shoot at the player. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So as you can see, as we shoot with, if we shoot at the player when it's not, no, if we shoot at the enemy when it's not hurt, we'll see an indicator of damage and how much health bar. And similarly down here, with this guy, the health bar will just decrease and continue to decrease until it hits 0, and boom, it goes away. Of course, we can run off, come back, and then let it respawn. And then if we come down here, shoot, and then blast, you can see that it did 8 damage, and the penetration is going through both projectiles here. And I think that is a good place to wrap it up for today's video, guys. Sorry for the errors and the kind of please stand by moments in there. It happens when if I've just forgotten to transcribe something. But if you guys are enjoying the series so far, be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below any of your questions and concerns. But other than that, I've been Kaner Nighthawk, and I'll see you guys later. Good job.